Hi, I'm David Hawk, CEO of Agile Velocity, where we focus on guiding organizations through agile transformations and are inventors of the Path to Agility framework. Our team has the pleasure of working with Southwest Airlines over the last 2 years and coaching them along their business agility journey. Today, I have with me Emily Beatty, an Agile strategist at Southwest Airlines, who has played a key role in their business agility adoption. Emily has been in the airline industry with Southwest for nearly 10 years. In her current role, she is a strategist improving the digital space using Agile methods with the booking flow and serves on the Agile leadership transformation team to help extend Agile within the marketing department. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is going to be great. We're going to kind of explore Southwest, we all have heard great stories, and a lot of those, a lot of the positives are true. Like I've been working with Southwest over the last 2 years, just a joy. People are great, the culture is great, and in our description, we kind of highlighted, but there are, even though there's been this history of great things, there's definitely been times when the company's been challenged, right? And some of those from 9/11 to, reacting to how are we going to get
Absolutely.
online, to even early days of, how are we even going to get planes, flying in Texas, and all of those different things. So, Emily, help us understand a little bit about like your experiences with Southwest, and how kind of Southwest deals with a crisis as things emerge. Just kind of share a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's been remarkable. Honestly, kind of like you were mentioning, the ability for employees to really feel connected to the airline actually comes from this seeing us move through these crises. There's actually Herb says that if, different quotes along, if you don't change, you're gonna you die. And so how do we just continue to move through those changes? And so some of those we've seen, even I started around the same time that we purchased AirTran, started a new rep rewards program, and then moved all the way through to what we're dealing with today. And it's just been remarkable to even see some of those changes flourish throughout this time.
Yeah, and so what do you think is unique about the way Southwest handles a crisis, right? And I know you've seen it there, but you probably have a guess at how others handle it, or what maybe what you like about the way Southwest handles a crisis. Maybe hit on that a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, it really comes down to the leadership. We've had such strong leadership at Southwest over the course of the history with Herb, and driving through that all the way now to Gary Kelly, and the way that he approaches different situations, and is super transparent with the employees and what's going on. It almost rallies everybody together, so that there is this focus, because we've had such clear values throughout this entire time. With that warrior spirit and that servant's leadership, and the fun-loving attitude. So you constantly are striving towards those goals and those core values, and almost like this back to basics kind of mantra, if you will.
Yeah, I think there's something really key to, there's clarity of the core. Like you walk around even the campus, you meet with folks over the last my 2 years interacting. That's consistent, right? There's nobody's in doubt about who we are, what we're about, who we stand for, what in that kind of internal culture. And so as you hit on, it's like that's not in question, right? That's kind of off the table. That's not something those are table stakes. That's non-negotiable, which makes I think it easier in challenging, when dealing with a new challenge. We're not worried about that, right? Like we get to focus on just, all right, here's the thing at hand that we've got to figure out, right?
Right.
Now, over the last year, you've been working on an Agile team within marketing that's really embraced these Agile practices, running quick experiments, fast learning, ability to adapt quickly. How do you compare that and that environment to kind of like the traditional, you know, we're going to build a task force for a crisis. You know,
Right.
how do you compare and contrast kind of those things?
Yeah, I actually think that they're really similar. The way that we've been working um, over the last year and a half as this agile pilot, if you will, um, to work closely together is exactly how we work in crises. And it's crazy because you see these teams come together and it's okay, everybody has this one mission and this one goal, and you're really going after that. And all the right players are in the room at the same time. You have the leadership support and directives to make the decisions that you need to make. And it doesn't take, you know, years to make those decisions because you're trying to make them as quickly as it happens. It's such a volatile time. And so those moments and those things that are changing have to be happening so quickly. And so I do think that there's a lot of similarities between what we're seeing and what we had been doing in a really great time of history all the way through to right now. Those teams are constantly popping up. We're like, okay, we need the, you know, teams to work on this, and this is what you're going to go after. And it's very clear. So I think they're definitely related.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we talked about that some of it's also about, all right, an agile team is how do we do that in a sustainable way, right? Sometimes when we get in the crisis, it's just like, go, go, go. We're all throw everybody in a room. Let's get everybody we need. We talk about in agility, like, let's get all the people we need and have all the right skills in a room, but also figure out a way that we can sustain that pace, right? And do that with balance, right? So one thing we talk a lot about is this notion of decision agility. And it's one of the capabilities we have in our Path to Agility framework. And it's a key component for us that leaders need to provide clear purpose, right? And if leaders are providing clear purpose, that allows team members to respond quickly to the information that they're closest to, right? The people on the ground are closest to the information, but if they're not clear on the purpose and they're just given tasks, then they're always having to go up and say, what's the next task, you know, boss? What's the next task, boss? And so decision agility is clear. Can you talk about how that manifests at Southwest?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we often do while we get all of these insights and these great nuggets of information from all over the company as to here's what we're going to do. And we have a wonderful insights team that's actually in the market constantly trying to hear from customers. And we actually do that on the Agile side too. So we have all of these pieces of information, but it's about how do they relay back to those overarching objectives from the leadership. And when we tie those two together, we're often able to see not only clear direction of where we should go, but that's kind of where that innovation also sparks from. So a good example is even during this time, our Agile team has pulled together some various aspects that weren't asked for because we did know clearly what we were going after. We knew how we could help, and we wanted to provide that as quickly as possible without even wondering what's next. And so when you have that core group of people in the room together, they're able truly to see, okay, here's what that looks like, and here's what we can do to help in that kind of situation. And it really does make a difference. Some of that actually went live in some of the big ad campaigns that we did, which is awesome to see.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the other benefit of employee engagement and what that leads to when we're involved in innovation aside, the key that's related here is this notion of responsiveness, right? And so when we talk about responding to a challenge or a crisis or a situation, it's about our speed of being able to adapt given all the rules just changed on us, right? And so the speed, that empowerment of the people to be empowered to figure out solutions, to test solutions, to figure out the how. You know, all we really need is like, okay, what mountain do you want me to go conquer, right? And if you tell me which one, then get out of our way. We'll figure it out, right? That's where that true kind of agility comes into play. Now, one thing we heard was that this time around was a little bit differently around how leadership responded in terms of, I think, a lot of times leaders want to jump into solutioning, right? They want to jump immediately in and start kind of solving in there. And has that shifted a little bit over the last year, would you say?
It depends. I definitely think it depends on the project and how much people are interested in it, for sure. But this one in particular, I think, with the pilot that we actually did this year, leadership was remarkable. I mean, they really stepped out and let us run with whatever ideas and whatever concepts we came up with. And it has been such a success in that way. So I do think they did a really amazing job of doing this right, where we're giving the employees who are really in the weeds, if you will, just go after what is going to make the biggest difference. When we have big things and big crises, it's hard when you need those folks who are going to be able to make the decision across the company, and so you see some of that too.
Yeah, and I think so.
Balance.
I think
for sure.
Another commonality between kind of like crisis and even the kind of agility pilot from last year was there wasn't, in those situations, you don't have a lot of clarity, right? So it's not like you can come in with a backlog of here's the 50 things we need to do. We didn't know. Right? Like, you don't know what to do right now. We don't have clarity, like, how long is this going to last? Like, we don't have clarity around those things. And we talk about this kind of VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world that we live in. And it's more and more every day. And so the notion of, even back with the pilot last year, there wasn't you didn't come in and you're given a backlog. You were given, all right, here's a mission, right? Like, let's try and optimize. What was that? What do you remember what that? And can you share?
Yeah,
what was? Yeah.
It was optimize the booking flow, and it was just that generic. And there wasn't a backlog. There wasn't this list of things that we had to chip through and get done. And so I really like how you kind of put that, because we ended up having to make decisions based off of what we were learning throughout that process. So we didn't really, worry so much about what was it going to look like exactly in a year from now. It was more of, how do we continually iterate so that it is meaningful content to our customers as much as possible. And so that was very exciting to see.
Yeah, and I think because what you're optimizing at that point isn't output, isn't get as many things done as possible. It's optimizing learning, right? And so it was, we're running something this week so that we can learn something to inform the decision of what we work on next week. And in a crisis where you do not have clarity, or a challenge that you don't have clarity, the first thing you're trying to learn more about the situation to inform the next step that you take, because you can't map out the next 3 months of steps, right? You don't have that kind of visibility. Now, another key component that we outline in Path to Agility to get to business agility is that teams need this very closely tied into understanding the customer, right? And I think Southwest does this almost better than anybody, as far as being connected to their customers, just like unlike any other company. So do you think this ability to connect and empathize with customers is critical to operating with agility? And can you kind of share a little bit of from the inside, kind of how that manifests?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a passion point for me, as it is for the company, because obviously we care so deeply for our customers, and everything we do is really around, how do we learn from our customers? How do we, including from our internal customers? And so one of the things that I always like to remember is that everyone who works at Southwest is likely a customer as well. Just because you're an external customer doesn't mean that, our internal customers just aren't as great. So one of the things we do, we actually interview our internal customers often, to get their perspective on things, because you'd be surprised. They don't you know as much as somebody who's on the outside if you're not in the day-to-day activities. And so that aspect in itself is just so empowering, because you're able to learn and feel like you're doing the right thing because you are a customer too. And so it just feels good as well. So it's critical.
I think you combine this notion, like these two real pillars to me of the organization, which is we're true to ourselves of knowing what our values are, knowing what we're all about, what our mission is as a company, how we're different than everybody else out there. And this tight connection to understanding who our customer is and empathy for the customer. I mean, everybody sees all the stories of, you know, I think you say like every seat is a story, right?
Right.
And we see so many of these great stories over social media and all over, but those things, again, because those are table stakes and those are kind of taken off the table, that we're not worried about that. Then when you're in a crisis in other organizations, I just see panic, right? It's like everybody's just clamoring, trying to make smart decisions, but without anything that's grounding them or is like a true north. And I think with Southwest, it's the ability to say, we know what we're about, we know who we're serving, and so let's go do great things, right? And
Yeah.
And revenue and other things will come, because that's not the first thing. There's nowhere where revenue, you know, hitting revenue is like the number one thing. It's about, are we serving, you know, employees, customers, right? If we do those things and we do those well, the rest will follow, right? Is there anything else you want to kind of add in kind of closing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's wonderful to watch us evolve in this way towards a more agile. I think we've always been agile-like. I think those moments where we're known as this company that can kind of overcome these obstacles and are prepared to overcome these obstacles, and that really comes from this ability to see what small teams can do, and you really have this warrior spirit at heart, and like you were talking about, the servant's leadership. And so when it comes to moments and when we think about what the future holds for us, you know, it's really exciting because we're talking about how to just do this even more and do this even better than what we're doing today, and always improving. So I think that's a constant benefit.
Yeah, well, cool. Awesome time today, and thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. It's always fun to talk about this.
Yeah. And maybe we're going to have some questions from the audience.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.